Ramakrishna. Parables are a series of simple stories used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. Ramakrishna Paramhamsa used to teach in a very simple way by the parables. The Fool's Search. As long as a man feels that God is there, he is ignorant. But he attains knowledge when he feels that God is here. A man wanted a smoke. He went to a neighbor's house to light his charcoal. It was the dead of night and the household was asleep. After he had knocked a great deal, someone came down to open the door. At sight of the man he asked, "Hello, what's the matter?" The man replied, "Can't you guess? You know how fond I am of smoking. I have come here to light my charcoal." The neighbor said, "Ha ha, you're a fine man indeed. You took the trouble to come and do all this knocking at the door when you have a lighted lantern in your hand." What a man seeks is very near him. Still he wanders about from place to place. The grass-eating tiger cub. If one receives the Guru's grace, one has nothing to fear. Once a tigress attacked a flock of goats. As she sprang on her prey, she gave birth to a cub and died. The cub grew up in the company of goats. The goats ate grass and the cub followed their example. They bleated, the cub bleated too. Gradually it grew up to be a big tiger. One day another tiger attacked the same flock. It was amazed to see the grass-eating tiger. Running after it, the wild tiger at last seized it, whereupon the grass-eating tiger began to bleat. The wild tiger dragged it to the water and said, "Look at your face in the water. It is just like mine. Here is a little meat. Eat it." Saying this, it thrust some meat into its mouth. But the grass-eating tiger would not swallow it and began to bleat again. Gradually, however, it got the taste for blood and came to relish the meat. Then the wild tiger said, "Now you see, there is no difference between you and me. Come along and follow me into the forest." So, there can be no fear if the Guru's grace descends on one. He will let you know who you are and what your real nature is. If the devotee practices spiritual discipline a little, the Guru explains everything to him. The Mahut Narayan. In a forest there lived a holy man who had many disciples. One day he taught them to see God in all beings, and knowing this, to bow low before them all. A disciple went to the forest to gather wood for the sacrificial fire. Suddenly he heard an outcry, "Get out of the way, a mad elephant is coming." All but the disciple of the holy man took to their heels. He reasoned that the elephant was also God in another form. Then why should he run away from it? He stood still, bowed before the animal and began to sing its praises. The Mahut of the elephant was shouting, "Run away, run away!" But the disciple didn't move. The animal seized him with its trunk, cast him to one side and went on its way. Hurt and bruised, the disciple lay unconscious on the ground. Hearing what had happened, his teacher and his brother disciples came to him and carried him to the hermitage. With the help of some medicine, he soon regained consciousness. Someone asked him, "You knew the elephant was coming. Why didn't you leave the place?" But he said, "Our teacher had told us that God himself has taken all these forms of animals as well as men. Therefore, thinking it was only the elephant god that was coming, I didn't run away." At this, the teacher said, "Yes, my child, it is true that the elephant god was coming, but the Mahout god forbade you to stay there. Since all are manifestations of God, why didn't you trust the Mahout's words? You should have heeded the words of the Mahout god. God undoubtedly dwells in the hearts of all, holy and unholy, righteous and unrighteous. But a man should not have dealings with the unholy, the wicked, the impure. He must not be intimate with them." How to seek God. If you see a person restless for God, you can be pretty certain that he hasn't long to wait for his vision. A disciple asked his teacher, "Sir, please tell me how I can see God." "Come with me," said the Guru, "and I shall show you." He took the disciple to a lake, and both of them got into the water. Suddenly, the teacher pressed the disciple's head under the water. After a few moments, he released him, and the disciple raised his head and stood up. The Guru asked him, "How did you feel?" The disciple said, "Oh, I thought I should die. I was panting for breath." The teacher said, "When you feel like that for God, then you will know you haven't long to wait for his vision." A man can see God if he unites in himself the force of these three attractions. The attraction of worldly possessions for the worldly man, the husband's attraction for the chaste wife, and the child's attraction for its mother. If you can unite these three forms of love and give it all to God, then you can see him at once. The angler. In deep meditation, a man is not at all conscious of the outer world. A man was angling in a lake all by himself. After a long while, the float began to move. Now and then its tip touched the water. The angler was holding the rod tight in his hands, ready to pull it up, when a passer-by stopped and said, "Sir, can you tell me where Mr. Banerjee lives?" There was no reply from the angler, who was just on the point of pulling up the rod. Again and again the stranger said to him in a loud voice, "Sir, can you tell me where Mr. Banerjee lives?" But the angler was unconscious of everything around him. His hands were trembling, his eyes fixed on the float. The stranger was annoyed and went on. When he had gone quite away, the angler's float sank underwater, and with one pull of the rod, he landed the fish. He wiped the sweat from his face with his towel and shouted after the stranger. "Hey," he said, "come here, listen." But the man would not turn his face. After much shouting, however, he came back and said to the angler, "Why are you shouting at me? What did you ask me about?" Said the angler. The stranger said, "I repeated the question so many times, and now you're asking me to repeat it once more." The angler replied, "At that time my float was about to sink, so I didn't hear a word of what you said." A person can achieve such single-mindedness in meditation that he will see nothing, hear nothing. He will not be conscious even of touch. The baby and its toy. When a father sees that his son has become restless for his inheritance, he gives him his share of the property even 3 years before his legal time. A mother keeps on cooking while the baby is in bed, sucking its toy. But when it throws the toy away and cries for her, she puts down the rice pot and takes the baby in her arms and nourishes it. I said all this to Keshav. It is said that in the Kali Yuga, if a man can weep for God one day and one night, he sees him, feel piqued at God and say to him, "You have created me. Now you must reveal yourself to me." Knowledge from books. How much of the scriptures can you read? What will you gain by mere reasoning? Try to realize God before anything else. Have faith in the Guru's words and work. If you have no Guru, then pray to God with a longing heart. He will let you know what He is like. What will you learn of God from books? As long as you are at a distance from the marketplace, you hear only an indistinct roar. But it is quite different when you are actually there. Then you hear and see everything distinctly. You hear people saying, "Here are your potatoes, take them and give me the money." One cannot get true feeling about God from the study of books. This feeling is something very different from book learning. Books, scriptures and science appear as mere dirt and straw after the realization of God. The Veil of Maya. Rama, who is God himself, was only 2.5 cubits ahead of Lakshmana, but Lakshmana couldn't see him because Sita stood between them. Lakshmana may be compared to the Jirva and Sita to Maya. Man cannot see God on account of the barrier of Maya. Just look, I am creating a barrier in front of my face with this towel. Now you can't see me even though I am so near. Likewise, God is the nearest of all, but we cannot see him on account of this covering of Maya. The Jiva is nothing but the embodiment of Shochitanando, but since Maya or ego has created various upadhis, he has forgotten his real self. The price of the diamond. All cannot recognize an incarnation of God. Some take him for an ordinary man, some for a holy person, and only a few recognize him as an incarnation. One offers a price for an article according to one's capital. A rich man said to his servant, "Take this diamond to the market and let me know how different people price it." The servant took the diamond to an eggplant seller. He examined it, turning it over in the palm of his hand, and said, "Brother, I can give 9 seers of eggplants for it." "Friend," said the servant, "a little more, say 10 seers?" The eggplant seller replied, "No, I have already quoted above the market price. You may give it to me if that price suits you." The servant laughed. He went back to his master and said, "Sir, he would only give me 9 seers of eggplants and not one more. He said he had offered me more than the market price." The master smiled and said, "Now take it to the cloth dealer. The other man deals only in eggplants. What does he know about a diamond? The cloth dealer has a little more capital. Let us see how much he offers for it." The servant went to the cloth dealer and said, "Will you buy this? How much will you pay for it?" The merchant said, "Yes, it is a good thing. I can make a nice ornament out of it. I will give you 900 rupees for it." "Brother," said the servant, "offer a little more and I will sell it to you. Give me at least 1,000 rupees." The cloth dealer said, "Friend, don't press me for more. I cannot give you a rupee more. Suit yourself." Laughing, the servant returned to his master and reported it. The master said with a laugh, "Now take it to a jeweler." The servant went to the jeweler. The jeweler glanced at the diamond and said at once, "I will give you 100,000 rupees for it." Eat the mangoes and be happy. The one thing you need is to realize God. Why do you bother so much about the world, creation, science and all that? Your business is to eat mangoes. What need have you to know how many hundreds of trees there are in the orchard, how many thousands of branches and how many millions of leaves? You can come to the garden to eat mangoes. Go and eat them. Man is born in this world to realize God. It is not good to forget that and divert the mind to other things. You have come to eat mangoes. Eat the mangoes and be happy. The Pandit in the Boat. Master, please tell them that little story of yours. Manilal. Once, several men were crossing the Ganges in a boat. One of them, a Pandit, was making a great display of his erudition, saying that he had studied various books, the Vedas, Vedanta, and the 6 systems of philosophy. He asked a fellow passenger, "Do you know the Vedanta?" "No," reverted sir. "The Samkhya and Patanjala?" "No," reverted sir. "Have you read no philosophy whatsoever?" "No," reverted sir. The Pandit was taking in this vain way, and passenger was sitting in silence. When a great storm arose and the boat was about to sink, the passenger said to the Pandit, "Sir, can you swim?" "No," replied the Pandit. The passenger said, "I don't know the Samkhya or the Patanjala, but I can swim." Master, what will a man gain by knowing many scriptures? The one thing needful is to know how to cross the river of the world. The bird on the mast. A man cannot renounce action as long as he desires worldly enjoyment. As long as one cherishes a desire for enjoyment, one performs action. A bird sat absent-mindedly on the mast of a ship anchored in the Ganges. Slowly the ship sailed out into the ocean. When the bird came to its senses, it could find no shore in any direction. It flew towards the north, hoping to reach land. It went very far and grew very tired, but could find no shore. What could it do? It returned to the ship and sat on the mast. After a long while the bird flew away again, this time towards the east. It couldn't find land in that direction either. Everywhere it saw nothing but limitless oceans. Very tired, it again returned to the ship and sat on the mast. After resting a long while, the bird went towards the south and then towards the west. When it found no sign of land in any direction, it came back and settled down on the mast. It did not leave the mast again, but sat there without making any further effort. It no longer felt restless or worried, because it was free from worry. It made no further effort. The walled garden. What Brahman is cannot be described. Even he who knows it cannot talk about it. There is a saying that a boat, once reaching the black waters of the ocean, cannot come back. Once, 4 friends, in the course of a walk, saw a place enclosed by a wall. The wall was very high. They all became eager to know what was inside. One of them climbed to the top of the wall. What he saw on looking inside made him speechless with wonder. He only cried, "Ah, ah," and dropped in. He could not give any information about what he saw. The others too climbed the wall, uttered the same cry, and jumped in. Now, who could tell what was inside? Only the 4th man came back and told people about it. He is like those who retain their bodies even after attaining Brahma Yajnana, in order to teach others. Divine incarnations belong to this class. The real Guru. One day, as I was passing the Panchvati on my way to the pine grove, I heard a bullfrog croaking. I thought it must have been seized by a snake. After some time, as I was coming back, I could still hear its terrified croaking. I looked to see what was the matter and found that a water snake had seized it. The snake could neither swallow it nor give it up, so there was no end of the frog's suffering. I thought, had it been seized by a cobra, it would have been silenced after 3 croaks at the most. As it was only a water snake, both of them had to go through this agony. A man's ego is destroyed after 3 croaks, as it were, if he gets into the clutches of a real teacher. But if the teacher is an unripe one, then both the teacher and the disciple undergo endless suffering. The disciple cannot get rid either of his ego or of the shackles of the world. If a disciple falls into the clutches of an incompetent teacher, he doesn't attain liberation. Breaking the jackfruit. If you enter the world without first cultivating love for God, you will be entangled more. You will be overwhelmed with its danger, its grief, its sorrows. And the more you think of worldly things, the more you will be attached to them. First, rub your hands with oil and then break open the jackfruit. Otherwise, they will be smeared with its sticky milk. First, secure the oil of divine love and then set your hands to the duties of the world. Fencing the young plant. It is extremely difficult to practice spiritual discipline and at the same time lead a householder's life. But still there is a way out. One should pray to God, going now and then into solitude, and make efforts to realize Him. Whenever you have leisure, go into solitude for a day or 2. At that time, don't have any relations with the outside world. Haven't you seen the trees on the footpath along a street? They are fenced around as long as they are very young. Otherwise, cattle destroy them. But there is no longer any need of fences when their trunks grow thick and strong. Then they won't break even if an elephant is tied to them. Just so, there will be no need for you to worry and fear if you make your mind as strong as a thick tree trunk. First of all, try to acquire discrimination. The giver is the Lord Himself. Once a fakir went to the Emperor Akbar to ask for money. The emperor was saying his prayers. He prayed, "Oh Lord, give me money, give me wealth." The fakir started to leave the palace, but the emperor motioned to him to wait. After finishing his prayers, Akbar came to the holy man and said, "Why were you going away?" The fakir replied, "You yourself were begging for money and wealth, so I thought that if I must beg, I would beg of God and not of another beggar." The fisherwoman and her basket. One day, Keshav came here with his followers. They stayed till 10 at night. We were all seated in the Panchavati. Pratap and several others said they would like to spend the night here. Keshav said, "No, I must go. I have some work to do." I laughed and said, "Can't you sleep without the smell of your fish basket?" Once, a fishwife was a guest in the house of a gardener who raised flowers. She came here with her empty basket after selling fish in the market and was asked to sleep in a room where flowers were kept. But because of the fragrance of the flowers, she couldn't get to sleep for a long time. Her hostess saw her condition and said, "Hello, why are you tossing from side to side so restlessly?" The fishwife said, "I don't know, friend, perhaps the smell of the flowers had been disturbing my sleep. Can you give me my fish basket? Perhaps that will put me to sleep." The basket was brought to her. She sprinkled water on it and set it near her nose. Then she fell sound asleep and snored all night. The women husking paddy. At Kamarpukur, I have seen the women of the carpenter families selling flattened rice. Let me tell you how alert they are while doing their business. The pestle of the husking machine that flattens the paddy constantly falls into the hole of the mortar. The woman turns the paddy in the hole with one hand and with the other holds her baby on her lap as she nurses it. In the meantime, customers arrive. The machine goes on pounding the paddy and she carries on her bargains with the customers. She says to them, "Pay the few pennies you owe me before you take anything more." You see, she has all these things to do at the same time. Nurse the baby, turn the paddy as the pestle pounds it, take the flattened rice out of the hole and talk to the buyers. This is called the yoga of practice. 15 parts of her mind out of 16 are fixed on the pestle of the husking machine, lest it should pound her hand. With only one part of her mind she nurses the baby and talks to the buyers. Likewise, he who leads the life of a householder should devote 15 parts of his mind to God, otherwise he will face ruin and fall into the clutches of death. He should perform the duties of the world with only one part of his mind. The Kite and the Crows. It is narrated in the Bhagavata that the Avaduta had 24 gurus, one of whom was a kite. In a certain place, the fishermen were catching fish. A kite swooped down and snatched a fish. At the sight of the fish, about 1,000 crows chased the kite and made a great noise with their cawing. Whichever way the kite flew with the fish, the crows followed it. The kite flew to the south and the crows followed it there. The kite flew to the north and still the crows followed it. The kite went east and west, but with the same result. As the kite began to fly about in confusion, lo, the fish dropped from its mouth. The crows at once let the kite alone and flew after the fish. Thus, relieved of its worries, the kite sat on the branch of a tree and thought, "That wretched fish was at the root of all my troubles. I have now got rid of it and therefore I am at peace." The Avadhuta learned this lesson from the kite, that as long as a man has the fish, that is worldly desires, he must perform actions and consequently suffer from worry, anxiety and restlessness. No sooner does he renounce these desires than his activities fall away and he enjoys peace of soul. Die yourself rightly. I tell you the truth, there is nothing wrong in your being in the world, but you must direct your mind towards God. It is all a question of the mind. Bondage and liberation are of the mind alone. The mind will take the color you dye it with. It is like white clothes, just returned from the laundry. If you dip them in red dye, they will be red. If you dip them in blue or green, they will be blue or green. They will take only the color you dip them in, whatever it may be. Haven't you noticed that? If you read a little English, you at once begin to utter English words. Then you put on boots and whistle a tune and so on. It all goes together. Or if a scholar studies Sanskrit, he will at once rattle off Sanskrit verses. If you are in bad company, then you will talk and think like your companions. On the other hand, when you are in the company of devotees, you will think and talk only of God. Strike the elephant. Anger and lust cannot be destroyed. Turn them towards God. If you must feel desire and temptation, then desire to realize God. Feel tempted by Him. Discriminate and turn the passions away from worldly objects. When the elephant is about to devour the plantain tree in someone's garden, the mahout strikes it with his iron-tipped rod. The blind men and the elephant. Some say that God has form and is not formless. Thus they start quarreling. One can rightly speak of God only after one has seen Him. He who has seen God knows really and truly that God has form and that He is formless as well. He has many other aspects that cannot be described. Once, some blind men chanced to come near an animal that someone told them was an elephant. They were asked what the elephant was like. The blind man began to feel its body. One of them said the elephant was like a pillar. He had touched only its leg. Another said it was like a winnowing fan. He had touched only its ear. In this way, the others, having touched its tail or belly, gave their different versions of the elephant. Just so a man who has seen only one aspect of God limits God to that alone. The same water, different names. God is one only and not two. Different people call on Him by different names, some as Allah, some as God, and others as Krishna, Shiva, and Brahman. It is like the water in a lake. Some drink it at one place and call it Jal, others at another place and call it Pani, and still others at a third place and call it water. The Hindus call it Jal, the Christians water, and the Muslims Pani, but it is one and the same thing. Opinions are but paths. Each religion is only a path leading to God, as rivers come from different directions and ultimately become one in one ocean.